Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crucial Conversations podcast. My goal on this platform is to empower others towards self fulfillment. These are the conversations that you need to have to unlock your maximum potential. Whether you are feeling confused about your path in life, falling in love, starting a business, healing your inner child, moving to a foreign country, embarking on your spiritual journey, or building generational wealth, let's talk. The range of emotions and experiences that allow us to fully live our lives on Earth are beautiful and yet can be difficult to navigate. My goal is to create a safe space to talk about life, the good and the bad, in an effort to share wisdom, advice, and insight. I want to connect with you. I want to encourage you and empower you to live the life of your dreams, while reminding you that that does not always mean that you need to change your circumstances. Together, we will help each other level up and have the crucial conversations necessary to do so. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Crucial Conversations podcast. Today, I am joined by Coach Ty Kane. Ty, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm gonna give a little description of who Ty is. I'm gonna read his background, give you guys a little information about what he is all about and his mission here on Earth. And I'm super excited about some of the topics that we're going to cover today. So Ty himself is a retired military vet, a retired athlete, business owner, and podcaster. He has lived in 8 different countries, including Japan, Portugal, Italy, and Spain, and currently owns the Arizona Bodybuilding Gym that he opened in 2013. Ty specializes in mentoring people physically and mentally, drawing on his unique experiences to understand, relate, and inspire. Ty is a strong believer that if your mind is strong, the body will follow. Ty is a podcast host himself, and I will link all of his information in the episode description, and he tackles new topics relevant to mental health, physical health, and self-love each week. He's been helping people, mainly athletes and military vets, with mental health for over 20 years. However, Ty's knowledge and passion is intended to reach people from all walks of life. Today, Ty and I will be discussing the topics of self-love, PTSD, and global depression. So, Ty, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gabby. It's nice to see you and nice to be on your podcast today. I look forward to the great conversation we're about to have.
Yes, I'm super excited. So, Ty, I was actually connected to through a friend named Andrew who moved out to Arizona recently and just got plugged in at Ty's gym. And he reached out to me and he was like, this guy's pretty awesome. You got to reach out to him. He's got his own podcast, and I think he'd be an awesome guest pertaining to some of the topics that you discuss on yours. So he connected us. Shout out Andrew for that. Amazing connection. And I'm really, really excited. The first time I talked to Ty was a phone call we had, and his energy and enthusiasm just radiated through my phone. And some of the things that he's working on right now really speak to my soul and some of the things that I'm trying to accomplish over here on this podcast. So today, like I said, we're going to talk a lot about self-love, physical and mental health, and how those are connected. PTSD, because Ty does have a unique perspective, seeing as how he was serving in the military for some time, and how he coaches other athletes and military vets through similar circumstances that he has a little bit of a personalized lens on based on his experiences. So lots that I'm excited to cover. But I just want to start very generally, and I want to, Ty, kind of hear from you, break down your mission statement. So your goal is to encourage self-love and improve mental health and physical health amongst your clients, your digital audience. I know you've got quite a following online, and just to communicate your message of the importance of self-love and mental health and taking care of yourself and each other. And so I'd like to hear a little bit about that and what brought you to this point today and why you feel like you're serving that mission as your purpose.
Well, I tell you, that's a nice statement. Thank you, Gabby. I'm going to have an intro for that. Well, the self-love is something that started back for myself. I had to learn how to do some self-love back in the late 90s after we went through some things in the military. Mentally, it really affected me a lot. So I had to start getting myself out of my own cloud, and I didn't know how to do that. So I had to get some help for doing that. And once I learned how it affected me at the time, I wanted to share that with other troops and other people around me that's going through the same. Sometimes it's depression, sometimes it's anxiety. It could be a combination of both. People don't understand. You can have both at the same time. But the self-love comes from, I'll give you an example. Just last week, This is a beautiful story. I was in Starbucks and I went to get a coffee, and the lady at the counter, she was taking my change, and so she looked at my coffee and she said, "You have I like the caramel macchiato. I know it's so good." So I told her, I said, "Hey, a little light on the caramel." So for some reason, she went heavy on it. They went heavy on the caramel. So she's at the desk and she's cashing me out, and she's like having this panic attack, and she's like, sir, I'm so sorry. I'm so stupid. I'm so dumb. I don't know why I did this." So automatically my heart just poured to her, and I'm like, whoa, you know, it's okay. You're not stupid. You're not dumb. Don't be so hard on yourself. That's the self love that we don't even realize sometimes. We do that, and we can get a store or whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm so stupid. I'm so dumb. But that's the first step of you really being down on yourself. So you have to learn how not to be so critical of yourself, but also be able to say, okay, I know I made a mistake, but how do you move past the mistake instead of having a breakdown at that moment? Because she's literally was having a breakdown. So I had to calm her down, and I was like, "Where's your manager?" And she's like, "We got a manager." Manager came out, and I told the manager how good of an employee she was and how great her service was. And the manager was so happy to hear that because he said she'd been working there like 3 months. So she probably had a little nervousness in her. So he's like, "Thank you for letting me know that." So I felt like I did what I could to help self love with that person. And that's just how I roll. Like wherever I go, we're going out to dinner or we're just going to watch a movie. There's self love that needs in American people I'm seeing every day because there's so much of them that's bogged up inside from it can be from the pandemic, it can be from other different things, but this self love that we don't have as a culture and as a country, those are the things I'm trying to help people out with. And it doesn't have to be a special platform. It just can be out and about. That's just who I am. The way I'm talking to you, it's the same way I talk to the young lady. So for the self love part, I think it started with me back in the late '90s, and it moved forward to now. I've been getting treatment for many years on self love, depression, different things, anxiety. I deal with it all. So for me, I have an outlet, which is my therapist, and I work very closely with my therapist on a regular basis. So she always keeps me grounded in different ways of my life and makes sure that I'm not getting less self love myself because I have times where I get down on myself and my athlete's not doing what I need them to do. So I have to keep them upbeat and not them have not they don't have so much I would call it self hatred
Mm.
against themselves. And people don't use that word a lot, but we talk about self love, but with self love, there's self hatred, and people don't really discuss that. So self hatred is the second level of you losing who you are. So now you start hating who you are, not just one moment, but every day you hating who you are. And that creates that down, down, down spiral. So if I can catch a person like one of my athletes getting ready for a competition, one of the football players I'm helping, or softball, whatever, my first thing with them, Gabby, is always their mental well-being. How stable are you before we start this journey? Because the journey we're about to go on, the mental part is going to be a day-to-day process, but you have to have control over it. And if you don't have control over it, then we have some problems moving forward, and we need to get you some probably professional help, to help
Yeah,
with that. But
absolutely.
I know that's kind of long, but I wanted to give you a little example of how self love I look at it when it comes to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, your example from your Starbucks encounter with the young lady who was serving you and she made a mistake, and some of that negative self-talk that is employed by so many people all over the place, it's unconscious sometimes. It's just like a knee-jerk reaction. Like you made a
Right.
mistake, oh, I'm so stupid, or oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so dumb. And it's just like the things that you're saying out loud your brain
Right.
does start to believe. And so that's why affirmations are so powerful. That is why positive self talk is so powerful. And I think that, like you said, self hatred is the negative, like downtrodden side of what self-love is supposed to be and look like. And so I think that becoming more aware of the way that you talk to yourself and about yourself is the first step into cultivating that space for self-love, because then you start to be aware of the kinds of words that you're speaking into yourself, because at the end of the day, your words, they become your actions, and then they become your tangible results. And so truly they form your identity. And at the end of the day, if you can't control all of your negative thoughts, because sometimes thoughts run rampant, and controlling the mind is like, you can meditate and do all of these different types of things and practices to be able to get a grip on that. But if you can at least control your words and the things that you speak out loud into existence, the more you have a little bit of a grip on your identity and your sense of self, and the self-love that you have for yourself. So
And one more thing, Gabby, not to cut you off, but I know we might get into it a little later, but I want to throw out there for the people that's listening that don't be afraid, guys, to do meditation. A lot of people think meditation is a waste of time. It's not a waste of time. You just have to do it correctly. A lot of people really don't do meditation the right way. So they might be in a noisy environment. They could be, there's a lot of things going on in the background. That's not meditation, So a lot of people, I would like to tell them, guys, look into how to do, and if you're around someone that is a professional at meditation, I would suggest taking one class just to learn how to meditate, because that helped me a lot from the early 2000s all the way through to the end of my career with the military. And I would take time and find these. I've had times, Gabby, where there's nowhere to go. I go in a closet and hide. I go in a closet, I hide for about 5 minutes just to get away from everybody and everything. And I know it sounds crazy as hell, but I did that because that was the only thing I could do mentally to be able to talk to myself and meditate.
Right.
So I always tell people, even if you got to go get in your car and do it, but find a quiet, private place that you can let these emotions and these mental things that's going through your mind and these voices that's grabbing at you left and right. Now you can calm it down and actually say, you know what, I need to meditate. Let me get in my own mind.
Right.
Let me get it out. And I think if people practice that, I was in Japan. I lived in Japan for 13 years. My daughter still lives in Tokyo right now. And they are very big on meditation over there. Asian communities are very big on meditation. They do a lot of yoga, different things that most Americans don't just do on a regular basis. So I'm trying to help with some of the Asian experiences I went through and actually implement that into my work that I do with people in today's world, because it doesn't matter what part of the world you're in. India, I know, is a very, very high rate when it comes to mental health. They have so many people there, right? So mental health is a big issue in India. It's a big issue in Japan, believe it or not. There's a lot of countries that have a lot of issues when it comes to, I would say, more of the depression than the anxiety. I think depression is more of a leading mental health cause than the anxiety. I would say depression, then anxiety, and then probably let's throw in, let's see, the third one would probably be people that's just basically can't stay off of drugs, addictions. The addictions would be very big, especially now. It may be moving up because you got these fentanyl pills and everything that's out there that's killing people, but these kids keep taking it, and it's like, do you need that to really survive? And some of them think they do,
Right.
That's the scary part. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there. I know I get long-winded, so.
Yeah, no, not at all. I like it. And I always say, sometimes we go off on tangents here, and I like the tangents because they foster they foster interesting conversation. But yeah, I mean, there's so many, components to what you just said. The dependency on external outlets, whether it's, drugs, or whether it's a certain person or a certain environment, but the power of meditation, which is really just a moment to connect with yourself, your higher self, ground yourself, and give yourself the time and space to simply be. Take your actions away from doing versus, being, which is what the practice of meditation allows the peace to flow through your being because you're not actively occupied pushing yourself to achieve something that is outside of what you currently have equipped with yourself at the moment. So meditation is very powerful. But I think too that, the saying that you had sent over in the questionnaire that I sent you was that if your mind is strong, your body will follow. I think that in my most previous episode that I discussed with Drake, we talked a lot about the interconnectedness of mental and physical well-being. But for you specifically, you know, you talked about your bodybuilding athletes and some of the people that you coach, and having that foundation of mental fortitude is so important because in order to achieve peak physical performance, you have to be able to hold yourself to a certain standard and remain disciplined and consistent. And, you know, when you get in the pits of negative self-talk, it can be very difficult to hold yourself to that standard and deliver yourself to those results, because it's a tough place to be, and it's a tough place to, you know, pull yourself out of those trenches when you're feeling really down low. So I think that the ongoing coaching that you have with your athletes about mental health is just as important, if not more important, than the physical component to what you're coaching them through. So I'd love to
Right.
talk a little bit about what are some of the specifics that you take your athletes through. What are your daily or your weekly check-ins look like with them, and how do you create that space for them to make sure that they're feeling 100% mentally? Maybe not 100%, but you know what I mean.
Right. Well, a lot of times, like you say, it's a daily life thing. So a lot of it is, I like to make sure that first of all that they set boundaries. I always talk about boundaries. So with my athletes, different things like that. Just sometimes I get my athletes just regular people, but setting boundaries for themselves to know that there's a line. Sometimes you have to go to that line, but not cross that line, and that could be dealing with whatever they're dealing with mentally. But I always like to talk to them. First thing I ask them is how's their mental well-being, how's your family, things of that easy conversation just to get them going. Each person I know their mental weaknesses, so I kind of know how to work with each individual a little bit different than I do the next individual. So
Mm,
sometimes it may be more about their kids,
mm,
it may be more about their wife, maybe
mm,
more about their husband or their parents or work, or so all of them have different issues, and some of them are very similar. They
mm.
just come in a different way. So for my thing is I always make sure the boundaries are right and to let them know that this is an everyday step process on your mental health. Your mental health is not going to be okay one day and the next day. It's going to be all over the place. So the only way you can take care of that is to really stabilize and find the boundaries where you need to be, and also mentally find those triggers that trigger you to things that you know you shouldn't be doing. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Because we all have triggers for certain things. So once you learn those triggers, and my job is to help them learn those triggers.
I
So
see.
I try to work with each one of them a little bit different every day. Like I said, it could be work, it could be family, but they all have something. And sometimes they come in smiling and they try to fool me, you know. But once I ask them, how's work? How's your work day been going? Or whatever, it could be over the phone. I can hear it in their voice. There's more to it than they're telling me. So I
Mm.
have to pull that slowly out of them to see what that issue is. And a lot of times it's very fixable. It's very doable to fix. It's just that you don't know in your own mind how to fix it because you're not communicating about it. You're
Right.
not asking anyone. So my thing is communication first, boundaries. I try to teach them. And like I said, just everyday self improvement. Little things, not big things. Don't try to jump and set something that's, let's say, for example, you're trying to build a house, but the first thing you want to do is just start chopping wood or whatever and building a house. You haven't got a foundation yet. So you're putting a house on the ground with no foundation. That's the way I look at the mental health. You can't just think it's going to fix itself. It doesn't fix itself. We have to start with a foundation to know your self worth, and basically, like I said earlier, your boundaries. And also, you want to make sure that you just tell yourself every day is a new day.
Mm.
Every day you wake up, it's a new day. It could be something in that day that just triggers you off, but how do you control it?
Right. Absolutely. And how do you respond? How do you control your responses to it and your reactions? Because at the end of the day, maybe you can't control the circumstance, but being able to maintain a level head and control your reactions and your responses, I think, is the key.
Right.
And you mentioned a lot about boundaries, and so what does that look like for you? Creating healthy boundaries that allow you to occupy a peak mental state, or maybe some of your athletes. I know that it looks different based on circumstances and other things outside of your coaching sessions or your phone calls or in the gym. But can you give an example of maybe a boundary that you have set or have helped someone else to set that has allowed them to be of a higher performing mental capacity?
Yes, of course. I have a few of them, but I'll give you one. And the main thing is the boundaries usually come with, I have to find out first exactly what they're dealing with. And one example I give you is recognizing the limits, the limits. And what I mean by limits, some people don't understand themselves what their limit is. So recognizing that and the boundaries is kind of like, what if I had a guy about 2 weeks ago? He's getting ready for a competition. He's a full-time student. He's married, has one little kid, and he wants to compete, and he's looking great, looking fabulous, but mentally he's not okay. And that's why I had to pull him back and say, you know what? Our limit is right now, you can't do this show because right now you're not mentally strong enough to get through this process because he have about 6 weeks left to go. And some of the things that these people take and put in their bodies to look a certain way, from the PEDs and everything else, I have to be aware of that. So for me, I like to make sure the boundaries, he knows his boundaries and where they are. And then I can teach him from that point on, like, okay, you got your boundaries, but now there's limitations to what you can do within those boundaries.
Yep.
You see? And that's the part I have to try to teach every individual a little bit different. So their limit may be different per person, what they can handle, what they can't. He was looking great, but it made me wonder mentally what he's not telling me, because there's things he's not telling me going on at home.
Sure.
See? And I find out from the wife what those things are sometimes.
Sure.
They tell me what those things. Now I can work with him a little bit better, So that's an example just to give you how I like to approach it.
Yeah.
When it comes to other people. With myself, I try to just maintain. I know my limits pretty well when it comes to. I'm a hard worker, so for me, my limits usually have to do with pulling myself back a little bit and not spreading myself too thin.
Yes.
Because I want to be on your show, then I want to be on this show, then I got my own show, then I have a gym to run, then I have employees that want to quit. I got to get new employees. It's a constant battle. So for me, I meditate every day. I know my limits that particular day. If I have a big load, okay, your limits need to be here. So setting those self-limitations and that self-boundary, it actually goes together.
Right.
It's just the boundary is the first part. Now, within that boundary, what is your limitations?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm very similar. I want to do everything and anything, and everything seems fun and appealing to me. But sometimes you end up doing yourself a disservice because by oversaturating your workload or the experiences that you have on your calendar for a day or a week, you actually take away from the presence that you're allowing yourself to occupy in each and every one of those scenarios because you're so worried about, oh my gosh, I only have an hour to do this, and I have to make sure that I'm ready to go for my next event, and it's scheduled right back to back, and I got to get going, and I can't stay over. And so it's just like, yes, definitely having your boundaries and your limitations for yourself about how much you can take onto your plate, because you have to know yourself in order to know your boundaries, set them, and then actually implement the practices that are going to help you to maintain them. Right.
Right.
So yeah, very, very important.
And every individual is so different.
Absolutely.
So it's hard for me, being an outsider, trying to figure out. It takes me a while to try to figure out what the individual who I'm working with, and where their limitations are at. I can usually get their boundaries really pretty quick, but the limitations within the boundaries, that takes a little bit more deeper diving into that person, what type of person they are. Like we have a very similar personality. We're go-getters. We want to get boom, 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 boom. Let's go. Let's get it. But at the same time, we know we have limitations within it. Like, okay, I only slept 4 hours, I only slept 5 hours, or whatever the case may be. We're not going to be very productive if we don't rest. That's one of
Right.
my biggest things with people. Calculate your sleep. I tell people that all the time when I'm dealing with them on the mental side. Calculate your sleep, because when you wake up in the morning, it has a lot to do with what your night was like. So when
Mm-hmm.
you wake up and start your next day, if you're dragging, and it's like, oh man, I don't want to work today. I'm so tired, but I'm going to go in anyway. Okay, well, that's not the start of a good day. And it could get better later, yes. But most of the time for me, if I wake up in a bad mood, I wake up not rested, my day is not very good, because I know I need that rest. You know,
Yes.
so everybody I tell them is different, but for me, I need about 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Even if it's topped up, I still need 6 to 8 hours of rest.
Yes.
So what about you, Gabby? Do you have an issue with rest or sleep?
Honestly, sometimes I think that I ebb and flow. Like that is one thing that I've tried to make a priority this year actually is waking up at the same time every morning, regardless of what my schedule looks like, because I know that for me and my work, I don't have to be in at the same time every day. I kind of, will be in sometimes at 8:30. Sometimes I don't have to go in until 3. Sometimes I've got an appointment here or a meeting then. And so it looks a little bit different every day. And so for me, I have tried very hard to maintain a routine. But I noticed that for me, when I fall off, it's because I'm staying up too late and my mind is elsewhere, whether I'm on my phone or I'm talking to a friend. That is something that I've tried to be a little bit more disciplined about, because my pitfall is not necessarily sleeping in, but it's going to sleep too late. And so even waking up at the same time, it's not as helpful if you're not going to sleep at the same time. So for me, it's like the end of the evening, I have to make a commitment to myself to unplug, detach from the matrix and just solely focus on like my rest, because this is what's going to prepare me for a fulfilled day the following.
Right.
But I've noticed that that's my pitfall, is like staying up later at night than I should. So
And that's very common. I just had an athlete just leave me, and he just told me he went to bed at midnight, and I trained him at 6:30 this morning. So it's like, dude, you sleeping at midnight? What are you doing? He said, Coach, I know you said it on your podcast before, and I'm a victim to it, but I have to start learning to put my phone down. The
yep,
phone,
yep.
the phone is the problem.
Yep, it is. It is. I was just talking to my mom last night about it, and it's an addiction, just like any other thing. It's
Right.
it's like a drug, or
It's almost worse
types of
than a drug, to be
foods.
honest. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
almost worse than a
Exactly.
drug,
I
because everybody
totally
got
agree.
one.
Yep, exactly. And it's like I know all of these things, and there's a difference between intellectually digesting and understanding something and putting it into practice. And I know that for me, I try very hard, but I see myself fall into old patterns and old habits so easily.
Right.
And so yeah, just again making sure that you're constantly checking in with yourself and you're making the time to meditate and connect with your higher self and cultivate this space for things that are actually going to build you up, whether it's self-love practices or achieving something in your business or planning things or whatever that looks like. But sectioning the time off to do that, because it takes you away from mindless scrolling on your phone and things that are really
Right.
taking away from your ability to have a great day or to achieve all of these things. Not necessarily that achieving is always the goal, but you know what I mean. Um,
Yeah. Oh, I know what you mean. Yes,
yeah.
because you're an athlete yourself, right? You have an athlete background as well.
Yes, 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 yes. So I know, and I think that's a big reason why I am the way that I am. Just an achiever
Right.
at my core, grown up that way, and that's how I'm always going to be. And I love it because it makes me who I am. So,
Right.
yeah. But another thing that I want to talk a little bit about is your work with, military vets. And obviously, you having served in the military, you have a little bit of a different, experience to bring to the equation, because you can personally relate to some of your clients who have served. But in the questionnaire, we had talked about PTSD being a topic that you would be interested in covering. So I want to open up the conversation for that a little bit. What is PTSD, and what are some of the common humps that you have to help get your clients over, or maybe that you had to get over coming from serving in the military? What does that look like?
Right. Awesome. Yeah. PTSD, post traumatic, man. That's usually what I just call it. Post traumatic. we know the rest of it, but it's something that's been a part of me for 25 years or more now, and it affects everyone differently. There's different types of PTSD. I'm going to go give you an example of my original PTSD episodes that I had. For me, my first episode of PTSD wasn't war. It wasn't a war combat type of thing. I had a major TBI, they call it severe TBI, traumatic brain injury is what that stands for. And basically, I had a fall. I fell off a 30 foot tall telephone pole. We were wiring telephone wires back in the older days where everything was aerial. So we was wiring the wires on the base, and I took a 30-foot fall because my belt snapped. So I was at the top working, and next thing I know, 30 feet, and when I hit the concrete, my head hit, my back hit, everything. I didn't even remember the fall, Gabby. I was knocked out, they said, for an hour.
Oh my gosh.
So when I woke up in the emergency room, and I'm looking around, this was back in 1993. I'm looking around and I'm not knowing what the hell happened. I just felt like I had a bad headache. Like, what's going on? They told me what happened. So that was my first episode of PTSD, and that carried with me. Not afraid of heights. I was in the Air Force. I wasn't afraid of heights or anything like that. Even afterwards, I was still good. But it was something about my memory that wasn't ever the same after that. It kept slowly being an issue as I went forward, and that was from the TBI, I think. So the next episode of PTSD I'll tell you about was an actual F-16 crashed. It crashed right into a housing residential area where I happened to be working. Once again, there's people burning, screaming, on fire. I mean, it was a horrific time. So I have a lot of PTSD dealing with that, and how I've been working with my therapist on that is I hear voices sometimes telling me you should have did more, you should have helped more. And a lot of the times I can't get away from those. I take medications for those type of things like that. So every now and then it still pops in my head. I could have saved those people. I could have did more for them. So I mean, those kind of things. Then I have guys that go to Afghanistan, come back. They've been shot at. They got bombs and EODs and things like that they've dealt with. So I can talk to them in a way to where I've been in those places. I understand what they've been through. But believe it or not, that part didn't. The death and things like that, that didn't bother me as much as watching the people, that visual of people burning and on fire. That's something I can't let go. And I told my therapist that I can't get that memory out of my head. So I've had hard times going to sleep at night. I don't sleep. I have insomnia. So I take meds for that. They got me on bed for almost everything. But the best thing that helps me a lot of times is by myself, and I can think. So the meditation for me, when I can cut all the chatter out and actually think, then the voices start to go away. Because I'm a strong believer in God. So for me, me and God have a very close relationship, and I don't go to church I hardly ever go to church, but me and God talk every day. So that's my high power. So I had to start learning to lean on more spiritual reasons to keep me positive in life. So that's helped me a lot of dealing with the PTSD. But when my guys get back from Afghanistan, some of them in their late 20s, early 30s, they just don't know how to handle that. It's like the regular world is not regular to them anymore. You know what I mean? So when you see these shootings and things like that, what upsets me is when these kids are out having shooting sprees and they're killing up people in churches or killing up people just for in the mall or whatever. My question is always why? If you don't have any mental health issues, anything like that, why in the world would you want to do something like that when I had to watch people burn to death? And that wasn't by choice, But you having a choice to go out there and shoot up, a bunch of people for what reasons? So we have a lot of mental health issues going on in our country. I'll just stick with our country, but we have a lot of mental issues going on. But with the PTSD, it's very common. very common for people military and not military, because a lot of times PTSD, I tell people, it's not about just combat, guys. People get that misunderstood. It's not about combat. Combat is one piece of PTSD you can have PTSD from. There's a whole list of things you can get PTSD from. You could have had sexual abuse. That's PTSD. You could have had someone break into your house and everything just frantic out of your mind, and then it got held at gunpoint or something like that. That's PTSD. So the list just kind of goes on and on and on. But how to handle that PTSD, it still starts with yourself. You have to start with self, but then you have to get therapy, and that's what I preach to my guys. Don't be afraid, guys, to get therapy. There's nothing wrong with that, And a lot of times they don't want to get therapy because if it gets back to their job think they have a mental issue, and they don't want to lose their position, they don't want to lose their job, or they don't want to lose their spot on the team, sports team. If you tell the coach that you got something mental going on or whatever, 9 times out of 10 he might tell you to sit down this week. Let's get you situated. But you're an athlete, so you want to play. I want to get out there and do my thing with my teammates or whatever. But that's still all the mental part of the pressure, and then that causes depression. Now you're giving depression because you're not getting help for the PTSD, because you don't want to say nothing, because you don't want the coach to put you on the bench. You see? So there's a lot going into PTSD. We can talk about that for hours, but I wanted to give you a couple examples of what I went through and what people that I work with. Majority of the times they're going through, like one woman came to me in PTSD because her husband beat the hell out of her on a regular basis. She was a client, and I told her, I said, look, when it comes to something like that in your household, that's an everyday PTSD experience you're going through. You're going through PTSD every day. And she said he beats her at least once a week. Well, I love him, and I just know he needs help. I'm trying to help him get help. So right now she's already thinking it's her fault. You see what I mean? It's not his fault. It's her fault. That's why he's beating her. That's what. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. That's not love. Him beating you that's not love. So she's gotten better. She's got a therapist now, and she's out of that marriage. So that helped her a lot. But it took a long time to get her to get therapy. She wouldn't get therapy. And I'm like, you have to let these things out. You have to talk about these things. And I used to have an auntie. I'm going to tell you this quick story. Another PTSD as a kid. I was probably 11, 12 years old, always spending time at my grandmother's house, right? And next door was my uncle and aunt. They had a house next to grandma's house. Well, every Friday, Gabby, it's like clockwork. About 6 o'clock in the evening, they fighting out in the front yard. And I mean fist fighting, not yelling. He's beating her, she knocking him upside the head with frying pans, and I mean it was every Friday. So I got to a point where I was like, Grandma, why don't you do anything? She said, you know how long they've been fighting like that, son? They've been fighting like that for over 20 years. And they're not going to leave one another. They love each other. I was like, that's just stupid. Why would someone want to be in a toxic relationship? But she said it's not toxic to them. You can't change everyone's life, because sometimes, because my aunt was her daughter. So that was my grandmother's daughter. She said, how many times I tried to stop all of that? And I went out there one time and I said, I got a broomstick, right? I went out there and I tried to beat him because he was beating up her. So I just had enough. I got a broomstick, started beating on him. Then he turned on me, started choking me. And then I'm like, okay. And she just stood and watched.
Oh, my goodness.
I said, oh, my God, I'm in the wrong place here. So that's when I had to learn sometimes PTSD, you can't fix everybody. You can't fix everybody.
Right.
So that was an experience as like a 13-year-old kid. I'm like, what in the world? Who would want to live like this? And they stayed married. They died. They stayed married.
And it's so hard to understand when you're at that young age. And, in abusive relationships, there's so many other things playing in the background that it seems like, well, why don't you leave? But there's so much going on behind the scenes, Maybe there's finances, kids, other mental health issues that maybe the one being abused is experiencing, and, the relationship that you observed at such a young age. There are so many things that I think are difficult to understand from a third party. And at the end of the day, you're right, you can't fix everyone. And I think that your heart and my heart are very similar. We want to help as much as possible, but not everyone needs to be fixed or wants to be fixed or wants to be helped, period. And so I think it's really hard to observe, especially working really closely with your clients or having experienced things yourself or through other family members. It's definitely a very unique place to be, and we've all got our things, but it's very tough. And I think PTSD, having had so many forms, whether it's in your life, whether it's coming from family or combat or personal experiences, you're right, it's not just reserved for people who have served in combat. And so I guess my last question pertaining to this topic is, going through those things, what does it look like for what does it look like for you on a daily basis now? Is it a memory that is constantly playing in your head that to you obviously has effects on your sleep? But when you say PTSD, and this is really just me trying to gain a little bit more of an understanding of what it truly means, does that resurface when you see things in an environment that remind you of a scenario that then you fall into a negative loop of thinking or of action? Or what really is that, and how does it reappear in your life now after the fact?
Right. So as of right now, I'm still getting weekly, monthly treatment for my PTSD and depression I go through. But for to answer your question, it's like the PTSD on a daily basis, it's always there. So while we're at the grocery store, somebody drops a case or drop a case of water or something on the, and then I'm looking for cover. You see what I mean? So those kind of things with my wife embarrasses the hell out of her. So I've been trying to lean on her to help me when we out shopping or something like that. And it's not every day, but it's all according to those triggers. What triggers come on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's why, to be honest, that's why I work as much as I do, Gabby. I'm trying to build this podcast like we're trying to build yours the same way. But these things are daily episodes that you have. But when I'm working, my brain stays busy working. I do not have time to think about it. I only have time to think about it when I'm out and about and I'm in the area and I'm like, okay, what is this person up to? You know what I mean? Walking around and you're in the neighborhood and you're looking around and you're like, are they trying to break into my house?
You're just conditioned. You're conditioned that way. And, like you said, it has nothing to do with this person, who they are, or this scenario, what it actually is. It's really just you're conditioned based on your past experiences. And unfortunately, they trigger certain trauma responses that I think you're doing exactly what you need to be doing. You're going through therapy and you're doing the things to do your inner work that are going to help you to heal those parts of yourself, and then are going to allow you to connect with other people and experiences in yourself to such a greater degree, which is very, very inspiring that you are taking those steps. Because like you said, a lot of people are hesitant to, does therapy mean there's something wrong with me? No, it doesn't. It means that you're actually taking the step and the initiative to do the things that you need to do for yourself to be the best version of yourself,
Right.
So very cool. I want to talk a little bit about depression. I know that you've struggled with it in your past and you have worked with some clients who have struggled with it. We talked a little bit offline about, since the pandemic, depression has increased 25% across the globe, and probably more than that. It's the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 34. There are statistics that we could go on for miles. So many people struggle with depression. How do you work with your clients or yourself to jump over some of these hoops, or jump through some of these hoops, when you have things and you have responsibilities that you have to tackle on a daily basis, and you might be having an awful day? And personally, I cannot say that I have ever experienced a depressive episode. And there are so many different types of depression. There's major, persistent, perinatal, so many types. And I just, for me, I am curious as to, what does that look like when you're having an episode? What are some things that you do for yourself or have coached your clients through, maybe, to help them feel a little bit better or get through their day and some of the responsibilities they have to take on, even if they are feeling down low?
Right. Yeah, the first thing I always tell people, Gabby, is communication. The communication first. That way we can diagnose what the problem is. You know, with the depression, what type of depression, like you said, there's many different types of depression. I'll talk about my own depression first. My depression usually comes with one or two things. First thing is my PTSD causes me to be depressed. The second thing is I get severe migraines. So I suffer with chronic migraines for the last probably 15 years. And that's probably due to the TBI I had back in the day, right? So I get very depressed. I don't talk to the wife. I won't. So I've been trying to get out of those type of. So she helps me with that on a day-to-day basis. And once again, go back to my spiritual beliefs. I have to get back into a little bit of reading, you know. And at that point, when I'm depressed, I don't do um, I don't do any type of practice I should do, like my meditation. When I'm depressed, it's hard to get into that zone
Sure.
to meditate, right? Uh, I've had a little bit of distance with my daughter that lives in Tokyo. That depresses me a lot. You know, I may not hear from her as frequent as I want to, but I know her life is good. I have a grandson right now. I haven't been able to see yet. He just turned 2. So I need to fly out to Japan and see him at some point. So those kind of things depress me because I feel like those things are missing in my life.
You feel
And
disconnected.
right. And those kind of things put me through depression. So my wife helps me a lot by keeping everything more positive. So she puts a positive spin on everything. So that's the one thing I love about her. She's such a positive spirit. So she's perfect for me
Yeah.
because I do have those episodes and I have those times. And she has her times because she's been dealing with her own depression because she has she was her father, she's her father's caregiver and he's pretty much getting down to his last months or whatever. He's I want to say in his 80s. So she has that she's dealing with. She's the only kid in Arizona, and he lives here too. But all the siblings live in Portland. So it's one of those things. Everything falls on her. You know what I mean? So I have to help her. So that kind of helps me not be depressed as much.
Yeah.
Because it shifts, right? It shifts now to me helping her through her depression. So that's what I mean by being a team. You have to be a team because depression, when it hits hard. And then a lot of times people don't know how to come out of that bubble. They stay in that bubble for a long time. You might have girlfriends or friends that go through it. And you're like, man, why are you not answering your phone? Why are you not texting me back? They may ghost you for 2-3 weeks. And you're like, what the heck is going on? They're usually going through depression. They're usually in some kind of depression state that they haven't talked to you about, you know. So my thing is when it comes to being depressed, the when we had the pandemic, that epidemic took people depression to a whole nother level, especially in America. But I was okay with that. What's funny is during the pandemic, depression didn't even exist for me. I was just the opposite. You know why? Because I didn't have to be around people. You see, I didn't have to worry about anyone triggering me. I wasn't around people because everybody was locked down. So I was happy with that life. I can live within myself and still be fine. But a lot of people just the opposite. You take away, they take away their socializing and things like that. Man, they lose their mind. Like they go into depression. I had a lot of clients didn't want to come to work out because I'm just depressed. I'm like, well, this will help your depression. Come work out, man. So I was okay with the pandemic depression time. I wasn't depressed, but I saw how much of a need now other people had depression. It really, really, and I don't think it went away. I think there's still a lot of people still depressed from the pandemic.
Well, and what's so interesting is that, it just comes back to what we've been talking about this entire episode is knowing yourself, knowing your boundaries, your limitations. Do you thrive in a small community with people like your wife that you can count on to be a positive and uplifting spirit? Do you gravitate towards large social settings where you're constantly surrounded by other people? Do you like being in more of a collective environment? To each their own. That's awesome. But knowing yourself and what you need. And so setting yourself up for success when you're feeling good, knowing that there is a chance that you may slip, having that community and that foundation of loved ones. And an interesting thing about depression is, like you said, sometimes that's the first thing that people do is they alienate themselves from others because they don't have the capacity to show up in those relationships, friendships, romantic, whatever that might look like. But having that strong foundation, whether it is a close-knit community or a collective community, a therapist or a close friend or something that you rely on to help to motivate you and uplift you, and not that it's all pressure on them or that it's their responsibility, but just knowing yourself to get to that point and build that foundation. And I think too is, for me, I know that I feel this way, and it is scientifically proven that when you're feeling helpless, the best thing you can do for yourself is to become helpful. So like you were talking about with your wife, when you feel helpless and you're going through an episode and you're really depressed, if your wife needs your help, you being able to pull yourself out of your slump and step up to help her is going to help you, because at the end of the day, we are all connected. And so that is the beauty of this like circle of community, that we can help ourselves by helping other people. And so I know that because I have an experience that I can't come from a first person perspective, or a personal lens through which I've tackled this scenario. However, I do know that for me, I've gone through lots of struggle. I'm just a very big person on like labels. I stray away from putting labels on myself or others. And so for me, I've never gone through a scenario where I'm like, okay, I label this was a depressive episode for me. Some people may classify it as that. I just personally have not. When I've gone through my struggles, though, I know that for me, if I need to feel a little bit more like I'm back in the driver's seat, I can go out and I can help someone else, and that really does in turn help me. So I really like that you brought that up. I think that's very important.
And I think with our business too, us helping people the way we do, it helps us a lot from being depressed, because we're constantly trying to help others.
Absolutely.
And I think psychiatrists, they say the same thing. It's just like they all have their own issues. It's just a matter of they help themselves when they're helping other people.
Exactly. Yep. And I know that we're very similar in that sense. That's kind of overarching goal for the both of us, which I think is beautiful. And I know that a lot of other people have that kind of heart. So being able to connect with others that are on that same mission, I think is very powerful. But I've really, really enjoyed today. I know we're coming up on the hour, so I want to be able.
Already?
I know. What a great conversation it's been. It's flew by. I've loved every second of it.
I was getting warmed up.
But I don't want to leave without letting everyone know how they can connect with you. They can follow your podcast, follow your journey, and I want you to be able to plug any of the resources that maybe have helped you, or that you feel like you want others to gravitate towards, so that you can help them. So your Instagram, like I said, your podcast, your YouTube, and then maybe leave us with a couple of maybe 2 to 3 tips that we can take away from today's episode that we can implement in this week, that might cultivate a space for more self-love and higher state of vibration for ourselves to carry out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I tell you what, we'll start off with just how to get in touch with me. Ty Kane Podcast on YouTube, guys. That's my main to go to right now, outside of Arizona Bodybuilding on IG. Okay, that's my main 2 platforms I use. And that's going to be, anyone can reach out to me. You don't have to be an athlete, guys. I help a lot of people that's just could be from engineers to lawyers, attorneys, whatever. You don't have to be an athlete. Some people hear the Arizona Bodybuilding and they think it's about bodybuilding, and they think about just putting on muscle and blah, 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 blah. Bodybuilding is your whole body. Don't forget your mind, guys. It's included with bodybuilding. So a lot of times people hear the bodybuilding, oh, there's big muscle guys. No, that's not what I do. I mean, I do that, but that's not what I focus on. So I want people to just know the self-love is very, very important, guys. Don't underestimate it. Self-love is huge. We have to make sure that we have prioritize your self-care. That would be the best thing I always tell people. You prioritize your self-care. Don't be afraid, to seek support from a therapist. That was from the biggest thing we talked about today. Is I think a lot of people are still afraid to take that step to talk to a therapist. If you're going through depression, if you're going through anxiety issues, or whatever the case may be, PTSD, please, guys, reach out and help. I mean, I'll be happy to give you the phone numbers. I got national phone numbers you can call, hotlines, but suicide preventions and everything else that went on this past month, we just have to be on top of it, guys. It's about love. We love one another. We all want to be healed people, and we want to be more healthier people at the end of the day. So I want to tell your audience that it's been a pleasure, Gabby, and I want them to be able to follow you and follow me because you're going to be on my show and I'll be interviewing you at some point. So I want people to know that this is a collaboration we're going to be working on. It won't be the last time they see me on your show.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I am so happy that we got to get connected. Again, thank you, Andrew, for connecting us.
Yeah,
Super stoked. So thank you so much, Ty, for everything that you shared today. I think it was really inspiring and something that everybody's going to benefit from. Like you said, whether you're an athlete, you're a military vet, or you're just kind of getting into this space of trying to increase your amount of self-love that you have for yourself and then love that you have for others. So very awesome episode. I really appreciate your time today. And I will make sure to link all of Ty's information, his podcast, his Instagram in the episode description. So make sure that you check that out so that you can connect with him on Instagram and his podcast. His episodes have been they're saturated. They're very profound with a lot of information that all of us can benefit from. So please check that out. And you're right, Ty, this is not the last time that they will be seeing our faces side by side on a podcast episode. So I look forward to connecting with you and hopefully being on your show soon. And then I'm sure you'll be back on the Crucial Conversations podcast in the near future.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Crucial Conversations. I hope that you were inspired by this talk and reminded that you are capable of anything you have the capacity to imagine. Share this episode with someone that you want to help unlock their maximum potential. Because sometimes in order to find the answers, you have to know how to ask the questions. And that is what we do on this podcast. I love you all, and I will see you next time on Crucial Conversations.